Hello dear, this is Mansoor Ali, Khattak, Assistant Professor in English at Cohort University of Science and Technology, Cohort. Today topic is very interesting topic. As we can see, it's bilingualism, but I will be exploring particularly the nature of bilingualism. So let's get started. There are a couple of points that I will be discussing in this very topic. There are total 5 topics, as you can see. The first one, I will be trying to define bilingualism because there is no great definition, as we will see just in a couple of moments. And also I would be exploring the background of bilingualism because there are a couple of points that we will be considering to know the real background of bilingualism. And the third one, I would be exploring about what are the misconceptions or myths or about the bilingualism in the minds of some people, I believe. And also I would be exploring what are the benefits that we can get from understanding or learning bilingualism. And also at the end of lecture, I would be exploring the process of bilingualism. What is the basic, you can say, procedure that we can really see while embarking upon the field of the bilingualism. So there is no great definition, and I can say that there will be some reason behind this very non-agreed definition of bilingualism. For example, it might be that it's very complex in the sense that either it studies, you can say, particularly L2 or L3 or L4, and also the relies on the combination of L1 and with the rest of the languages. But there are true definition. One is the strong version definition of bilingualism, which believes that if a person is a native or native-like in the use of the two, or particularly the target language. And this very definition is very, you can say, non-flexible one. You can say it doesn't give that rooms to the individual. But it's very interesting because if you have a target of the competency, you can say more or less same in your L1 or L2, then this very definition would really help you. And there is another definition which is a flexible one, which we can say the weak version definition of bilingualism, which believes that if a person is just able to use a couple of sentences, a couple of phrases, a couple of words in different situation and get so that he or she could get across the message, or just uses maybe often the L2, then I think this ability can also be included, you can say, in the subject of bilingualism. So overall we can see that bilingualism combines, you can say, the L1 with L2 or L3. It is not the only, you can say, picking up of any language, maybe L1 or L2. So these two definitions can really cover, you can say, the common thing to me is just, you can say, that bilingualism is just composed of L1 and L2. This is a very common thing in both definition. Personally, I like, you can say, the weak version, because when a person is trying to pick up or learn a second language, a third language, a fourth language, as a target language, then basically he or she is very weak at the beginning. So I think this very weak version definition of bilingualism can really be helpful for the beginners. And as soon as a person advances in the competence level of L2, then we can include, you can say, the ingredients of the strong version definition of bilingualism. Moving on to the background of bilingualism. I think there are a couple of points that we need to consider. Bilingualism, as I told you, it's a combination of L1, L2, but what is the proportion of these L1 or L2, and the interferences of all these two, L1 and L2 could also be included in bilingualism. And when we include, you can say, other languages, I mean L3 or L4, then it becomes multilingualism. So the question comes in the mind's eye that either bilingualism is multilingualism or vice versa. Both are interchangeable. But bi means two and multi means more than two, as I have just expressed in the form of L2, L3, L4, and so on and so forth. The third point is that in case of English language, which is L2, and it is very interesting one, which English language, either it is the L2 in a A-shaped form, A-shaped form, L2A means the native Englishes, and then in the native Englishes, we can really include, because the very popular American and British languages, English languages, but we can also include Australian and Canadian and New Zealand Englishes, which we call it, you can say, English is a native language countries. And also we can also include in the bilingualism in case of English language, the local Englishes, which I have labeled it as L2B, such as Pakistani and Indian Englishes, is highlighted by Kachru and couple of books and couple of articles starting from 1970s, 1976, and so 1985, for example. And other writer has also pinpointed these very local varieties as Mirisinho, for example, 2015. In background of bilingualism, we should also consider the affective, cognitive, and behavior factors of a person or a community. These are just, you can say, how a person just feels about, you can say, the bilingualism or being bilingual, and also how he or she, you can say, understand and pick up and you can say conceptualize in his or her mind, you can say, and the critical angle about these very things, cognitive wise speaking, and also behavior wise. For example, if somebody likes, you can say, being bilingualism, but he or she is not trying, you can say, to adopt the behavior of a bilingualism. So we need to also consider these point as well in the background of bilingualism, and also local and global consideration. For example, if there is a multilingual country, so we have to consider, you can say, the very local, you can say, languages, and also the you can say national language, and also the official languages, and the global consideration. For example, what is the phenomena going on? Either it's a bilingualism or multilingualism or monolingualism. So in background of bilingualism, we need to consider these very points. Now, moving on to what are the myths, what are the misconceptions about the bilingualism, and these are very interesting. For example, there is one misconception that bilingualism can really confuse a person if you, and also maybe you can say some feeling of, you can say, being anxious, worried about, you can say, you are L1 or maybe L2. So I think that's a very interesting, you can say, myths. And the second one, that if you are to be bilingual, then one has to be smart. Maybe meaning, for example, that one has to be very competent, one has to be very full of struggle and energy and power and enthusiasm and making more efforts. This is a myth. And the third myth, that bilingual would be failing in his schools or in colleges. And the fourth one, bilingualism is not a good choice. It's a bad choice. One should not make it. And some people also believe that bilingualism doesn't exist, particularly maybe this conception might be very popular in the native countries, but they are also, you can say, multilingual these days. But there is another side of the coin of the bilingualism that we need to consider, the merits merits, you can say, just really minimize, you can say, the myths, as I have covered in the last slides. Positive effect on the brain may be meaning, for example, that your mind become more alert, more refreshing, more creative, and provides educational advantage. You can you can say, exploring the material maybe in your L1 and L2, and your social interaction could really be enhanced with the help of the bilingualism, and make you more open-minded. Trollable personality could be again, and also bilingual is valued, is respected, is in the workplace, and bilingual can easily translate, you can say, from L1 and L2 or vice versa. It can become effective teacher in case of, you can say, if you want to adopt the teaching profession, language teaching profession, or any teaching profession in any field. I think in any subject, then could bilingual could be really helpful for you. Then you can be able to explain, you can say, the different concepts, you can say, in two languages for the learners. The process says of the bilingual. So I think the processes, the 4 points that I want to explore, that what are the main processes which we should consider. For example, simultaneous bilingualism, that if a person is learning two languages at the same time, then he is a simultaneous bilingual. And sequential, for example, one is followed by another one. For example, if you develop a competency in L1, and then when you get mature and when you get adult status, then you embark upon learning L2, then it's sequential followed by L2. And the balanced bilingualism, as you can say, when you have a mastery of the two languages and roughly equivalent, roughly in the sense you can say that, you can say one is just very close to the L2 competency. There is a very slight difference at the competency level, then it becomes a balanced bilingualism. And the dominant bilingualism, and that's the reverse, I would say, of the balanced lingualism, that if an individual have competency or greater proficiency in the use of, you can say, in any language, I mean in L1 or L2, I mean in the target language, then the dominant bilingualism is the key thing. So these 4 points, I think, will really be interesting when you are considering, you can say, what are the processes of bilingualism. For example, which one you like it? For example, if we divide 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4, these are simultaneous and sequentials. Personally, I think simultaneous. I'm personally becoming a simultaneous. For example, I was learning my L1 and also L2 as well. And in case of English, I think simultaneous bilingualism is on the way. We are using, you can say, the English language is in L2 in our houses, with our friends, on the streets, on the campus, in our working environment. I think that very simultaneous bilingualism is taking place, I think, in most part of the world in case of English language. And also balanced bilingual, dominant bilingualism, that's very interesting one. When it depends upon the use, I would say, of any language. I think if you are using L1, then I think your L1 will be a dominant language. And if you are using, you can say, the target language and giving more efforts and more, you can say, energy or resources to the use and learning of L2, then probably your L2 would be coming over L1, and then the dominant bilingual would be L2. So these are just very 4 key points that we need to consider in bilingualism. Overall,
So these processes of bilingualism are 4 basically, but I think these need to be explained in a bit detail. For example, these are having theoretical implication. For example, what is the real nature of bilingualism, as we explained in the last slides, but here these 4 important consideration further make it, you can say, theoretically a more complex one. I think in individual simultaneous bilingualism is also going, possibly the same individual might be, you can say, passing, yeah, have passed, or is supposed to be passing in the sequential bilingualism. And also when a person is going through sequential bilingualism at the same time, either his competency is by balanced bilingualism or dominant bilingualism. So these are the very theoretical implication of the process of the bilingualism. And also we have to consider the pedagogical implication. um, pedagogical implication pedagogical implication pedagogical implication of the process of bilingualism, for example, is a language teacher, which one we have to consider. For example, personally I believe that simultaneous bilingualism, particularly in a multilingual society like in my country, Pakistan, or in India or in another country, possibly would be going through. So all these things have pedagogical implication as well, and what sort of teaching practices I have to follow. For example, or when I have to consider the bilingualism, should I switch over from L1 or L2 or vice versa. And in a case of multilingual, for example, there are languages, for example, your national language, your local language, and also international language has also. These things should also be, you can say, kept in balance, which proportion a person is giving to his or her, you can say, teaching methodology and teaching practices and teaching activities. So these, and also the curriculum, I would say that what kind of, you can say, languages you as a bilingual language teacher, a bilingual developer, you incorporate, what sort of topics, what sort of contents you are incorporating. So all these also have some kind of consideration should be kept in mind in the process of the bilingualism. And also the research implication has can also be derived from the process of bilingualism, keeping in view these four important consideration. For example, either you are, you can say, taking the relation of the two languages on the, and also the impact of these two languages on the cognitive, on the affective, on the behavioral sides of an individual. Either you are taking, you can say, the very effectiveness of these processes, you can say, while you are teaching, while you are, you can say, developing some kind of material. And also research, what sort of, you can say, research design or research methodology you are following when you are doing a research, trying to get, you can say, a more valid data. I think the mixed method research design is encouraged to be, you can say, practice to be followed while embarking upon the process of the bilingualism, because as I told earlier, that it's a very complex process and a complex field of bilingualism, where you are combining, you can say, the very cluster of the languages and all sort of characteristics, you can say, the culture, the pronunciation, the values of all, so many communities you are taking into account. So I think the research design should be, you can say, followed a mixed one. So I think the process of bilingualism itself, you can say, I have given more time to this very slide, this very large slide. So if I could summarize it, you can say that the process of bilingualism has a very, you can say, important key place in the field of bilingualism. To me, it is not, you can say, covering the 4 points, but there are so many sub points that should be considered while considering the process of bilingualism. So at the end of the lecture, if I could summarize the lecture, you can say that I have explained a couple of points. The first point was, you can say, that there is no agreed definition of the bilingualism, and also two definition I have explained, and these two definitions have very great meanings for the learner, for the teacher, for the researcher, and also the myths and also the misconception about the bilingualism. And I would have to tell, you can say that the world is full of, you can say, bilingual and multilingual community and practices. So the myths seems to be gone and should be gone. And I think every person, as individual, as a teacher, as a learner, as a researcher, know and should know that the reality is that we are having a multilingual society and multilingual practices. So I think these myths are gone to me. And also the benefits, I think there are a couple of interesting benefits that we can reap while having the competency of being bilingualism. And also, I have explained, you can see the process of the bilingualism, and in the process of bilingualism, I have explained a lot, you can say, points, and I think I should wind up the lecture. Thank you so much.